You are now listening to For All Nerds Show, a podcast about geek and pop culture from the perspective of people of color. For All Nerds is hosted by DJ Benhameen and Tatiana King Jones. For All Nerds Show is a member of the Loudspeakers Network, where we always say rest in peace to our founder, Combat Jack.
For All Nerds Show is powered by our listeners. Everything we do, from our podcasts, live events, our website, are all independently funded. Please continue to support us through our Patreon page at patreon.com/forallnerds.
Welcome to the Fan Bros, the show where the bros are fans. Doodle. And what's up, y'all? And welcome to another episode of the For All Nerds Show. The voice of the urban geek, the podcast where we discuss geek and pop culture from the perspective of people of color. And as always, in the captain's chair, it's your boy, DJ Benhameen, a.k.a. Backwash Cortez's biggest fan, a.k.a. the Dumbaka Rider, a.k.a. Chewbacca Khan, Lando Californication, the Riz Skywalker, Slade Trilson, Big Dick Grayson Energy. So that's how I'm feeling today. There's a lot going on here in the spaceship tonight. And as always,
sir.
I'm joined by my partner in crime,
Tatiana King, the Grand Duchess of Tech, also known as Lawanda Vision, a.k.a. Doc Aki, a.k.a. Dr. Doing Something Strange for a Little Change, a.k.a. the Ting of the North, a.k.a. the Little Mermaid, and a.k.a. Mulatto Hightower, one more, a.k.a. Flex Luthor. And yes, it is a glorious day indeed. Should we gonna tell him why it's so glorious?
I mean, I might as well, let's just get right into it. Thank you for joining us here on For All Nerds. Like I said, the podcast of geek and pop culture, twitch.tv/forallnerds, all the better and great different podcast platforms that you might be listening on. And for people who have been listening for a little bit, last year or so, we've been teasing a very big announcement. Very big. So big you'll be able to buy new hats on the show for a long time now. That's another
Winthrop House sounding right there.
Yeah, that's a little reference.
That was a little Safe Negro podcast reference.
That's
right
a little little Safe Negro and a little third base reference for those who know. Gas Face. Shout out to my brother Combat Jack. Rest in peace. But yeah, we do have an announcement that we've been teasing for a long time, and that was made earlier today. Much to my surprise, honestly, I did not know. I knew it was coming soon, but, we've been waiting on this for so long that I did not know even what is today, so I can remember this day of infamy or
May
famousness.
17th, in the year of our Lord 2023.
Yes, Lord. And I did not know that this announcement was going to be made, but today, let me just get it out the way. It was made. Titan Comics is publishing Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze, a space opera, black-ass Afrofuturistic tale, graphic novel by Mellow Brown, your boy, DJ Benhameen, with art by the motherfucking living legend, Tom Mandrake. And let me shout out my colorist, Justin Prokovich, who's doing the ill colors. And I want to say Jim Campbell is our letterer, but I'm not 100% sure on that last one. I do know the first four of us are confirmed. And yeah, it was announced today in conjunction with the Jimi Hendrix estate. Shout out to Jimi Hendrix.
Benhameen is at a loss for words because
man,
this has been monumental. Obviously, this has technically been years in the making.
And
at least for y'all, 6 months in the making. But this is incredible beyond measure, Benhameen, and you should be incredibly proud of yourself. I will say it again. I will continue to say this. I am exceptionally proud of you. I love you dearly, and so happy that you get to see the fruits of your labor, bro. Like, and I gotta make sure people understand, Benhameen and Mellow Brown, two people, two black men, wrote a graphic novel about the Jimi Hendrix. And they have a legendary artist, Tom Mandrake, doing the art. Let that stick to like grits for a while. Let that stick, my nigga, because that's a big fucking deal.
It really is. Like, the Hendrix estate is notoriously tight with his likeness, with everything about him, and we dealt directly with them. We spoke with Jimi Hendrix, who is his sister, and that alone. I mean, this whole thing is still like, it's surreal, and like in the illest way possible, because it's a whole lot. I mean, I'll get into more about it on other stuff about how Hendrix has been a part of my life, how even like what we're covering in this book is like related to my life and was like the first era of Hendrix that I really got into, and what Hendrix means to me as a black man and as like a rock god, and what we were attempting to do with this book, which is represent blackness and really establish like Jimmy as that rock god, like where we wanted to use all the visuals and imagery of what you normally associate whiteness with rock music, like the side of vans, the painted airbrush imagery on the side of vans, like even Stranger Things where dude's standing on the top of the van playing his guitar. I wanted all that type of imagery with an Afrofuturistic. I mean, it's so fucking wild, man. This book is something else, dog. Like,
let me interview you for a minute. Like,
right.
what tools or like methods you used to draw inspiration as you were writing this book, this graphic novel?
It started well. First I did as much research as I could in the time I had about Hendrix. Like, I knew a lot about him, but I read some autobiographies, a couple books of his. One that was taken from a lot of notes from him, so it was like directly in his voice, kind of, and like his own diaries and things like that. So that was really dope. And I just immersed myself in, I don't know, black music, but I'm always doing that all the time. I have a playlist that I'll put out. I have like a few playlists that were kind of my inspiration as I wrote. I kept adding more songs to it.
What were you listening to?
Oh man, I don't know offhand. It was a lot. Like, I just went in the title and typed in Black Rock, and then I grabbed this like Black Rock playlist of all new Black Rock acts, and then I mixed it in with a lot of Hendrix and a lot of old rock that I love, and then I was just adding to it and letting Tidal's algorithm just determine what was coming next, and then okay, I like that joint, and I'm throwing it in there. I like that joint, I'm throwing it in there. But I can say that. Yeah, I guess I can say this. A lot of the book is centered around the band of gypsies. I know the word is controversial and we don't really use that word anymore, but Hendrix formed an album, created this one album later on in his career, and the story is kind of told around that album. It's very allegorical. I should know these words, right?
You said Al Gore. I was like, what?
Yeah, allegorical.
Allegorical. Okay, I'm like Al Gore's internet. What?
Yeah, no, allegorical. It's a space opera story. That's the thing. It is not.
Okay.
It does not take place on Earth at all. It does not. It is involving the character Hendrix. Who is. I don't want to give too much away, but it's Jimmy in space, kind of, like. But
so Jimi Hendrix in space with a mix, as you said earlier, of Afrofuturism, fantasy, sci-fi. I mean, the name that in the ellipses it says Jimi Hendrix ellipses Purple Haze.
Yeah.
So very imaginative.
And
to say the least.
Even in the description that's been given by Titan Comics, it involves Hendrix battling against an intergalactic empire to free a planet of people who've been oppressed by this empire. And so there's a lot of politics and a lot of real world things mixed into this. People were asking me today, does it start off with Jimmy jumping out of a plane because Jimmy was a parachuter in the Air Force for a bit before he became a famous guitarist? And we're like, well, no, but we definitely took a lot of inspiration from his time in the military and how he felt about the military afterwards. So that's a lot of this too.
Yeah, that makes me think, like, how much of Jimmy's legacy or his real world legacy did you weave throughout this story, right? Like, yes, obviously it's a world of fiction, but it's built off a real person, a real man, right?
A lot, I would say. I mean, there's a lot of things from like Jimmy's artwork. Jimmy himself was an artist and a painter that we drew inspiration from that turns up in Tom Mandrake's art, to just Jimmy's politics, how Jimmy felt about life, how Jimmy felt about war. A large part of this book is centered around the intergalactic war. And so
Mm.
how Jimmy would have felt about any war, it informs a large part of this and this story that we're telling.
Mm.
And
How
like
Uh-huh.
no, go ahead.
Please continue.
Oh, okay, I was going to say also how I feel about black music, and personally informs a big part of this story, and like how I feel about my role and musicians' role in general in black music informs a big part of the story, and I'm really super proud of that because and it's ideas that I've carried around pretty much all my life, or especially since I really became heavily involved in music.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, it was like, oh, okay, I started to see things a certain way, and I'm definitely not going to give that away yet because that's a big part of my story and a real big part that I really love. But how I saw things, I got to express directly in the story, and that was something that I'm really exceptionally proud of. And I'm just exceptionally proud of what me and Mello did with this book because it just feels like we accomplished all the goals that we set out that we started with, which was to tell a futuristic, Afrofuturistic story where it features people of color in the future in space using magical and other ways to battle enemies that are oppressive, like a giant, oppressive thing, but to offer hope to the people, to bring hope to not just the characters in the book, but also the people reading it, and to inspire people and to bring black music and put Jimmy's place in black music and the pantheon of like black musical gods, make sure that people understand that where he fits into this.
I'm glad you mentioned about music itself and your role in music, because being that you're a DJ and you're a producer, obviously that's going to inform your approach to different things, right? Like
Hmm.
how you express music within the confines. I don't even want to say confines, within the framework of a graphic novel, right?
Yeah.
Especially someone like this, how important that is, right?
Hmm.
Um, how then did you translate that with the art, right? Because you had Tom Mandrake doing this, right? So
Yeah.
did you have direct input on the art? Did you
Yes.
have okay? And how did that process work?
All right. That's just first of all, that's like you see, I get speechless, right? Like, all right, Tom Mandrake. Y'all can Google him right now, and I had to. I'll be 1,000% honest, right? Because especially for our eras, when Mandrake's an older artist, he's been in the game for a minute, like, and for the era when I grew up reading comics, he was heavy DC, and I wasn't DC at that time. Like, I knew the characters, but I just wasn't reading them week to week, month to month. So I didn't know Tom like that. So even when they're like, "Yo, Tom Mandrake is doing the art," I'm like, "Okay, who is all right, that's cool. Who's that?" And I went to Google, and I'm like, "Oh shit, this motherfucker can draw." And then I kept doing my Googling, and I'm like, "Yo, this motherfucker can really fucking draw." And then I started Googling and Googling, and I, see his legacy and the people he's worked with as an artist and the things he's done. And I'm like, yo, this motherfucker here is a legend, you
So the
know?
first thing you did was get familiar with Tom.
Oh, first thing, immediately
First thing.
went through everything he had done as much as I could because I needed to understand certain things, and I needed to know this before I talked to him. And that was something that I really loved. And it was one of the first things I discussed with him. But I found a page from his Swamp Thing, I think it was from the late 80s. And it was a splash page where it was the hood and it featured a bunch of black people, but all of them looked distinct, but all of them looked very black. And all of them had different hairstyles. One had an afro, one had a flat top with the, like 3 cuts on the side, like Big Daddy Kane. And so I was like, oh, he been paying attention for it. Like, he's a white man, but I've been like, oh, Tom been on his game since the 80s. So I don't have to worry about the first thing that I was worried about. Can you draw black people? And can you give them the respect that they deserve? So
That's a
I
big
didn't have,
one.
yeah, I didn't have to worry about that. So that was, the first thing I discovered. And then like I say, it's just, it goes beyond that. Like this motherfucker, he's one of those, like, he's an old school classical comic book artist, so he's one of these people whose storytelling is just second nature to him. And that's a kind of not a lost art, but not as many people do that this day. It's like, especially from the 90s, there was a big emphasis on splash pages and stuff. Now it's changed. People have gotten back into the game and, really doing storytelling and, angles and knowing all that. But for someone like Tom, this is a second nature shit to him. This is just how he does it. And so I already knew that going in. I'm like, okay, this dude, anything I throw at him, he's gonna be able to handle. But
how much collaborations were there? I mean, you
that's
said
right.
you
We said,
collaborated.
we said, get
no,
back to that.
but you're telling the story, right? So you
Yeah.
you did collaborate, and as again, you got familiar with him. You recognized that he could translate your vision. But how exactly did you collaborate? Like, did you give him like some of the writing and say, hey, draw what I wrote? Like, how did that work?
From the jump, it was like, I think the first thing he saw was our pitch, right? Because we pitched this to Jimi Hendrix and to Titan Publishing. We went through several rounds with her, going back and forth, discussing different things about the concept that we had, the characters, the story arcs, all these things. They were still pretty rough then, but at the same time, we pretty much from the beginning, we had this story that we were going to tell, and it's pretty much what ended up on page. And that's another thing I'm super proud of. But with Tom, so he'd seen that pitch. And I think the first thing we did was me, Mello, and Tom got on a Zoom. Yeah, we got on a Zoom after. By then, we'd written issue 1, I think, by the first time we talked to him. Or we were into writing issue 1, one or the other. So we get on with him, and we start discussing certain things. And I think even from before that, I hit him on the email, might have said this. But one of the first things like that I wanted to talk about was, one, okay, I got it. You can do black people. We're good. Boom. You can do people of all kind of different races for that matter, of all kind of ethnicities. I don't even like using race, and you can do the storytelling and you can do the action. So boom, we're good on all that. All right. But I was like, now this music, right? And how it's depicted in comic books is very important to me. And that was another bit of my hardcore research I did when I first got the gig was I Googled immediately, how is music depicted in comic books? And I was like, okay, how do I not want to do this? And how do I want to do this? And which ways can inspire me? And which ways do I like, okay, well, that's inspiring in a different way where I don't do it that way. And one thing I knew I didn't want to do, and that's why I was Googling it to see other ways of doing it, was I didn't want the little musical notes with the little wavy, where they're like the musical notes are wavy and floating. That I cannot deal with it. That shit's tired, man. Like, it's just not, it's a trope at this point, and so you got to find a way to do it differently. If you're going to do notes on the page, even then let's figure out a way not, to make it different, but I wanted to avoid that unless it was intentional. Like Doctor Strange fighting with notes. Or in Legion, they did this L thing where they had the notes across the screen and then like the dude paused time. It was like flicking with the notes and shit. That was ill. But I didn't see that in comics with notes. I just didn't want to see them, somebody playing the horn and the notes coming out of it.
Flying out, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to see that. So that was one thing I Googled, and I won't really, tell you exactly how we ended up describing music on the page, but I think we do our own different way, and I think it's a very well done. And I will say two of the big inspirations were The Wicked and Divine, and then wildly, there's a Jim and the Hologram series from a few years back that's fucking incredible and does some of the best work I've ever seen with music on the page. So that was one of my big inspirations, but also just, basically from, me and Mello's mind, and we felt that music should dictate the way the scene, like the way the song is depicted should be to the way to convey the emotion of the song and the emotion of the scene.
Okay. Yeah. What was the most challenging part of building this project?
Balancing telling the story that we wanted to tell and talk. I think that's always the most challenging part of any project for me, and I'm just happy we managed to pull it off in this one. is balancing talking about the things that I want to talk about with telling a good story.
Okay.
You know, because I usually will talk about the things I want to talk about much more than tell a good story, and that could be a problem, obviously, because you got to tell a good story. I think we balance that very well, and I think Mello is just very helpful for me in terms of like balancing some of my more wilder impulses, you know, in terms of storytelling. But I'm just like, and I think the original pitching portion was also one of the more difficult parts because it was convincing the Hendrix estate, who is
judge and jury and executioner,
as they should be,
yeah,
you know, over this property, which is near and dear to them, but convincing them that we were the right people for this job. Because this project has gone through multiple iterations, and it was a long time, even before we came onto it, to print. And so it's being out, like I always talk about this, how, you know, any movie, book, anything like that in this modern day and age, being out is a miracle. But having seen what took for this to come out, I really feel this is a bit of a miracle.
What was your most favorite part of this project?
Oh my God, seeing Tom Mandrake's art come back to me. Well, collaborating with Mello, because that's my fucking brother. Like, me and him will, you know, we'll be like, all right, we're going to do this Zoom call 8:00 tonight. And because he's in California and I'm in New York, so that's pretty much how this whole thing was conceived, was over Zoom calls. And we'd start at 8 and be on till like midnight, sometimes 1, maybe. And I'd say an hour and 15 minutes of that was talking about Hendrix, and the rest of that was just us just, you know, fucking talk about everything else, which would lead into this book, you know, because that's what I'm also very proud about, is how much this book, I'm proud and also a bit worried because there's so many references to me in it, and where I see them directly, some of them are very direct and some of them are oblique, and so people won't get them, but I see them all because obviously I have made them. So, but you know, I'm really proud of that. And like I say, with Black music in general, it's not just Hendrix portion. It's just like about Black music and the whole, from I would say beginning to, you know, now it just encompasses all of that. And so, especially now, it has so much things that can relate to people who are creators and creatives of right now. And that's another thing. It's messaging in there that I wanted to give out to the world right now. And I feel like it's so current and so needed. But back to what was my favorite parts of it was sitting there talking.
I thought that was it. What you were saying was some of the favorite parts.
Some of my favorite parts was sitting talking with Mello. And then I just wanted to talk about Tom Mandrake's art for a second. Because that was the thing, like you said, how did this collaboration go? And I didn't really get to that as much. So I'd like to, we had the Zoom calls, and then from there it became Tom would start working, and he first sent us, like, he had done some sketches of Jimmy and everything, so he was sending that, and he sent me one where Jimmy was that one I posted on my Instagram, where it's like you see the music coming out of the guitar, and he's like, this is one of the ways I want to do it. I was like, okay, that's dope. Let's, you know, good, we're, you know, me and you are on the same page. And it was funny, when I first talked to him, he was like, yo, I'm so happy you said that, because I didn't ever want to see any squiggly notes on my shit. And I was like, yo, bro, we on the, you know, me and you, we, you know, we're here.
We see each other.
And I told him, I was like, I needed to talk to you because I saw that Swamp Thing page and I know what you can do with Black people. So we're good on that, you know, because I've got these characters in my head right now and I need them to look a certain way, doop. And, you know, I'm describing them. One of them, Vesper, you see she's on the cover of the book that was released today, and Vesper is one of my fucking favorite characters I've ever created in life. Like, she's the heart and soul of this book. She drives so much of the story. She has her whole other arc in of herself, and I'm just so proud of her, and I love her. And so I was like, yo, you know, she got to be, you know, and he got it right away. And so when I first saw the sketches of Vesper, I was like, oh my God, like, and then this is one of my favorite moments in life, you know, beyond this book, is when Tom emailed me and Mello, and he told us that he was super inspired by what we'd written, you know,
that's
like in his art.
That's big.
Yeah, because Tom is this legend who has worked with every name I can ever think of, all the people I aspire to be like.
You said since the 80s?
Yes, since like the late 80s, early 90s.
Been doing this.
Been doing this. And with nothing but legends. You know, he had legendary runs on Swamp Thing, on Suicide Squad, on this book, on that book. You know, since I've started telling the few people who I've told about this before today, when I told them, especially comic book, you know, business people, insiders, shout out to my brother Joe Illidge. I told about it. When I told him Tom Mandrake was doing the art, his jaw dropped. You know, like jaw dropped to the floor. He's like, what? You know, when I told Dimitri at anyone, what? You know, it's the same look I've gotten from everyone every time I tell people Tom Mandrake. Isaac, when I told Isaac Goodart.
Yeah.
Same.
What?
Everyone gives the same, what? You know, and this is my first book ever. You know, like I've written all kind of things, but this is my first graphic novel. First time I'm learning the whole structure, the style of it. I've read millions of things on it. Shout out to my brother Kieran Gillen, who is, you know, he's always been a teacher about the style and structure of comic books. But it's so much things you're learning as you're doing. And, you know, I'm still going to be learning. And there's things I wish I could have done this way or that way. So when Tom is like, yo, I'm inspired by what you're written. I'm like, you've had words from all the greats. You've been there and done it.
You do know that your experiences and everything you've gone through in life has built up to, this is one of your many nexus moments, right?
Yes.
Like, this is a fucking nexus point.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Because it's Tom Mandrake. And this dude is sitting there doing this art. And I'm like, every time I'm sending him scripts, I'm like, oh my God, please, you know? And then like even our editors coming back, like, yo, this is great, you know? And like I said, at first, the Hendrix organization and the estate, they had so much to say. And then as the scripts kept coming in, they kept being like less and less notes. You know, they're like, oh, you're getting it. You're getting it. All this stuff is just killing me because even to this day, like having finished it and I'm really proud of it, I'm still like, oh my God, people are going to read this in a few months. And like, that's something, I know this is a mental health awareness month, right? And we talk about this all the time on the show and imposter syndrome and all that. And I had that all through this motherfucker.
I was going to ask you, did you feel like they made the right decision picking you?
Yes. Hell fuck yeah. I feel like, I mean, I always feel like that. I feel like I'm the best player on the court. You know what I mean? Like.
So why did you have imposter syndrome?
Because it's still, okay, one, because this is my first book, right? And so, because I know people like Kieran Gillen, because they've become friends of mine over the years, you know, and because I'm such fans of theirs first, people like Damon Lindelof, you know, I know they're going to read this, you know? And it's just like when I was working on American Gods, and I was like, oh my God, these episodes are going to come out. And then they didn't, so I didn't have to worry about it. And I was like, oh, whoo, you know, I was mad.
Were you afraid of this? Were you afraid of this being real? Benhameen?
Yes. No, I was excited. I was much more excited than afraid because I knew we'd put in the work. You know, I knew me and Mello had done the work, and I knew Tom Mandrake was fucking doing the work. Like, you know, but I knew me and Mello had done the work. Like, I knew, like I said, I've been a comic reader since before I can remember. It's one of the earliest things in my life, you know, and I've been a reader since even before that. Like, I was reading at a very advanced level since I was a very little kid. And so I've read tens of thousands of comics. I can't tell you. I was just reading all of Peter David's Hulk run again. That was, you know, it's like hundreds of pages I just read through in a few days like that. You know, I just chew through these shits. You know, it is what it is. I read comics, you know. I read a couple new ones today. Like, I just read, absorb them shits. No, you know, no problem. So, having done that, I've read a lot of greats and a lot of bad ones. And I knew from the jump, especially once we turned it in, and once I really sat and, you know, I've reread it a million times, you know, edited it down. I'm like, yo, we really told an ill-ass story in these 4 issues. You know, it's about 4 issues long or so. It's about 88, 90, 100 something page, you know, around that pages of art, you know, of story. How much the art is going to be, I'm not sure, because, you know, Tom is going a little bit overboard with some pages and doing all kind of masterful shit. So I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to be in the end. But what we wrote was, like, it's a lot in these pages. You know, there's a lot of story, and there's a lot of story that's told in that, plus a lot of backstory that's established, a lot of stuff that's set up for future adventures if possible.
I got to pause you for a second because you said you did the work. You said you really dug deep. You said you knew it was ill. You believed in yourself. You
Mhm.
were the guy. So what were you so afraid of?
Reactions from people. And knowing that you're the guy doesn't mean you're above criticism, doesn't mean that anything should be flawless, anything should be perfect. And because of that, I know that people are gonna, there's gonna be people like, oh, this sucks, you know? And I've got to deal with that. Excuse me. And that's something that I, on that level, have not had to deal with yet.
Okay, there it is. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. Like, we've done this show for years. I've been a DJ for longer than that. I've lived in the public eye for most, longer than I haven't. And I've dealt with positive and negative criticism all through it. And I know for most of it, they're two sides of the same coin. But it's certain people who I want to impress. That's more what
their feedback is important to you.
Yeah, it's like I think we were talking about this on the panel that will be part of this show. But I think it was that episode, but I've mentioned this recently. Like, I always think of Too Short and how he talked about when he making an album, he makes it for the Too Short fans. So he's like, I'm trying to make the best album for that one person. And yeah, it was on the panel where I was like, I'm trying to reach that one foreigner person. When I was talking about the people who used to email us or still email us with personal, heartfelt messages. So I'm like, I'm trying to reach them.
Yes.
Every week. That one motherfucker. Because I know if I reach them like that, I'm going to reach everyone. So that's how I felt when I'm writing this. I'm like, I'm trying to impress them motherfuckers who impress me. You know what I mean? That's how I feel. Like, I'm like, yo, I want to fuck their heads up. Like, people like Joe Illidge. I'll be honest. I wanted to fuck Joe Illidge's head up.
I think you succeeded so far already. Before you even read it, you succeeded.
Yeah, but I wanted to fuck his head up because I know he's read, if probably way more comics than me. And so it's like, in the art form of comics is something too. Like, I tweeted this a few weeks ago before we made an announcement, and I'm going to retweet it now. It's like, I said, my first comic, I wrote it in a way that if you translated it to film, it would cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, it would be impossible.
Yeah, because that's how you want to get rich, Ben.
But Guardians of the Galaxy was allegedly impossible, and we have 3, so...
Different. And I'll be honest, but Guardians of the Galaxy also costs over $100 million. And
there's $100 million in this world. We can make it.
This is $400 million easily. And we could, but that's why I wrote it like this, because I didn't write it for it to be translated to a movie. I wrote it to be the illest fucking comic book. Because like that's what I wanted to do, because there's certain things that you can only do in comic books. And you have no budget in a comic book. You're only budgeted, like Kieran had this whole essay about Kieran Gillen, a whole essay about your budget is limited by what your artist can draw. And so how much you want to stress them out per page, basically, is what your budget is. And so, like, to that limit, I couldn't, like, have Tom, like, draw, do this, But
you had someone that draws like that anyway.
Yeah, who does a lot anyway.
Like, they do that shit anyway.
The second and third page of this shit is, I wrote those pages, there may be, like, less than a paragraph of description. I said, blah, 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 blah. When I got back those 2 pages, to this day, I've spent hours just on those 2 pages.
Yeah.
Hours on those 2 pages. Just sitting there like, right now, as I'm saying it, they're popping in my head. I'm just like,
the images.
Yeah, I'm just like, those 2 pages. Like, and so when you talk about, we're back to that, what was my favorite part of working on this book? That was like, again and again, I've still got pages. I'm waiting on, pages right now. And it's like, I can't wait, every time we like when we got like about halfway through it, I was like, oh my God, we still haven't even gotten to, one of my favorite characters, and they're about to come up. So I'm finally going to see how Tom is going to interpret this. And then he gets to it. And the first, like, you would get, and it's been such an ill process, because he'll send us the pencils, which are the raw pencils. So I see the raw, and I'm like, ooh, and I'm picking out all these little details. And then when you see Tom's inks over it, it's just like that is, I've never had this experience. I've never had someone take my words and translate them into another medium. Other than I've written plays and seen them acted out. I've done that. But I've never had someone, I've never had a finish. Anything I've written before, I shot the film. I directed it, things like that, short films like that. So I didn't get to see someone else translate, It was akin to when I made a production and I let this dude mix it. And I've had two people mix two different tracks now. And both times when I get them back, I'm like, oh shit, wow, But this is even crazier because it's like a whole different medium.
Yeah.
It's like they took words and made it into art. And
yes.
that shit it's so crazy, though, because it's like, he's so talented. That's one thing. But his style, like, it wouldn't matter to me, it's different styles. I can't wait to do this more and more because it's like to see, your work translated into different styles is to be so ill to me too. But Tom has such a clean and beautiful and just
very beautiful, very
storytelling,
very expressive,
sense. Very expressive emotions on every minor character in every page. You can just feel a whole story. Like it, as a kid, I used to look at art and I would just, if it didn't have a story behind it, I would just make up a whole story for that page. Like if it was some painting, I would make up the whole story in my head about what happened before, after that. And seeing this, his art is like, fucks me up so much. So just like, I want to write about every character on every page, every side character. I want to write a whole story on them.
Yeah. I would think you would finding joy in the surprises because it's translating words, which is one type of art, into another form of art, but then translating shit that you weren't maybe not intending to translate or didn't think that could be translated, and he did it.
There's like the very first page again, like I was trying to decide if I wanted to say what was the inspiration, and I don't. So, but I was going to completely jack the visual style of something for this first page. That was what was in my head. I'll once it comes out, I'll probably get back to that and, explain some of the inspirations and all that, but I want to wait on that. So I had that in my head. I was like, okay, this going to look like this, this, and this, and this. When he sends me this art back. And that's how I described it. This, and this, motherfucker. And
he said, okay, boss. And did what he wanted to fuck.
And that was
Tom Hendrix.
And this was very early in our process. And this was like you talk about, how did this collaborative process work? Because I had it, like, directed this page to a T. This shot, this shot, this shot, this shot. No, on the page, too. I'd written it like that.
You did? Okay, you wrote direction notes.
I'd written, like, these panels should be shaped like this. I want them to look like this on this page because it was a motion and a rhythm we're going for, and I want it to be like this. I get that page back and it looks nothing like it.
Absolutely. He said, cool story, bro, and let me show you who I am.
It's still, but dog, when I talk about another page that I've stared at forever and ever is that very first page. And when I say it expressed everything to a T about what I was expressing, but it did not look at all what I had thought of. Fam.
That surprise, that joy.
Like that joy. And that's when I emailed him back and I was like, look, Tom, I don't give a shit what I wrote in the script from now on. Like, if you have a different way of seeing things than the way I did it, you do whatever you want, and I'll put because we still will do it.
Did you change words based on something you drew?
Yeah, we're not doing it exactly like the Marvel method, which is more like you just describe a scene and then they draw it and then you fill in the blanks. We have a full script, like I said, sometimes I had panel directions, because I envisioned it a certain way and I need certain things to happen on, even like, especially that first page, there's a lot of musical references and things like that in this book. So it's like certain things I wanted to happen a certain way, but it still worked out perfectly is all I can say about that first page, but then after that, I was much more loose with it. Even like by the, as I'm turning in the last pages to him, it's a lot less direction. It's more like describing what is on the page and then, panel by panel, basically. But even that he's changed, ways. And I don't give a shit because, what happened, what we're still about to do now is the lettering pass where we will actually take our words and be like, okay, do we need to lessen the amount of words on this page? Do we need more? Et cetera, things like that. But for the most part, I'm not looking to change too much of that. I feel like, you know, we've done like so many edits of this. It's more just about like to fit with his art. Like, do we need so much, or can his art tell this, you know, are the characters saying too much? But as far as like the general gist of what they're saying and like the words, I'm good because I feel like we did that work, man. It's, you know, yeah.
You poured your being, yourself, your soul into this. I mean, I know that's kind of cliche to saying that, but it's really evident to me just in how you're speaking and how you explaining the process, how much of yourself and of course of Mello has been poured into here, and what you've went through, all the mental gymnastics you had to go through to, like, you know, recognize where you were in this whole ecosystem, right? But also how important your contributions are. Like, you're one of the authors of this, right? And there was nobody else to lean on, right?
No.
And you mentioned having messages and things that you wanted to get out, you know, particularly music and the African American community and what we stand for when it comes to music and our contribution
and Black music worldwide. Yeah.
Blackness overall. Like,
yeah.
What do you hope people get out of this after reading the graphic novel?
Oh, man. Well, the very first thing is what I established, what I pitched the Hendrix estate on, was the fact that, like, me personally, my first god of guitar is Prince. And then it's Hendrix. And I really don't care what order you put them in, but you better put those two, and then you can put anybody else after that. And so that's pretty much what I wanted. That was the first thing I wanted to establish. Like, Hendrix is one of the greatest musicians of all time, and he is a Black man, and he knew he was a Black man, and he knew what that meant in this world, and he always represented that through his music, and I do not feel like that's represented nearly enough. And so that was the very first thing I wanted to get across, was how much Hendrix is part of Black culture. And that was the very first thing that I hope people take away from it. And then the second thing was that people get this fucking awesome, dope ass sci-fi opera, Star Wars, this inspired, you know, saga, fable, grand tale with a real human story in the middle of it. Obviously, I mean, you got to have human stories in, you know, any great story. And seeing Black people do magic and space shit and space shit, you know what I mean? Yeah, and just all the things that I grew up on seeing. It's one of those things where I feel like I took everything that ever influenced me and put it into this book. You know, like, there's grand action, you know, inspired by martial arts and anime and, you know, gun fu and all that type of thing. And then music just being a central part of it. And then weirdness. You know, that was something I just tried to do on every page as much as possible. Was to just, like I said, do things that I feel like I could only really get away with in a comic book, because it would just cost too much in a movie. And somebody would be like, nah, we can do it this way for cheaper. You know, so it's like, fuck it. How weird can we make everything on every page?
Yeah. Who would you say this book is dedicated to in your efforts to bring this alive?
Oh, man. I don't know. That I'll probably say, like, most things in my life are, you know, in some way dedicated to, like, my mother, you know, rest in peace, and to Combat Jack, rest in peace, you know, because those are two of the biggest influences in my life who have passed away. And I'd also say to Black musicians worldwide, you know, like, that's really who I feel like this is, you know, a love letter to. Yeah. Because it is directly a love letter to every Black musician, and even, you know, just musicians, you know, because I don't want to be like, you know, just the Black people, but, you know, it's really about how Black music is at the core of American culture. You know, that's the first thing. And so that is what I wanted. That's another thing I wanted to express through this. And I feel like we do express that, even though it takes place in space. It's obviously, like we say, very allegorical, where, you know, it's talking about things that happen on Earth.
Yeah. What you gonna do when people start cosplaying as these characters?
Oh shit. That's like, yo, that and like seeing people do fan art and shit is like, that's the next level. You know what I mean? Like, the Tom Mandrake thing was one thing, but I'm hoping and I'm praying. I just feel, in my heart that these characters are going to resonate. I feel like Raina and Vesper, two of my favorite characters, are going to be people's favorite characters for various reasons. And I just think that we're going to see, God willing, a lot of them, of Foxy, another character who I love, of Hendrix himself, and variations of Hendrix, because Hendrix is the character Hendrix is not exactly Jimi Hendrix. So you will see different styles and all kind of flavor. Tom Brady put his heart into the designs and the characters and the fashion of what they're wearing. That was a large part of our discussion, how everything is stylized and how things draw inspiration from both Hendrix's real life and from all these other things that, we were throwing into the mix. So the
cosplay is going to be
the cosplay
insane.
shit. I can't even, I can't imagine, man. Like, I remember I was with Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey one time when I'm standing there talking to somebody who was cosplaying as one of the Wicked and Divine, as the Morgan, and they walked up, and so she was losing her shit. And they're just like, yo, and she was really dope, so not the Morgan, it's the other, the Morgan's girlfriend. No, that is the Morgan, right? Yeah, the Morgan is the girl.
With the ravens and all that.
Yeah, that's the Morgan.
That's Morgan.
Yep. So yeah, she was as the Morgan, and they were like bigging her up and stuff. So I can't imagine that type of moment for me or Mello or Tom. Like to see this stuff.
Another translation, another art translation, right?
And more that it struck a chord with them that much. You know what I mean? Where it strikes a chord with people that much, where they put the time and effort into cosplaying as your creations. All like I can't. Like, I know Mello's already seen that with his Blade Runner book, which is fantastic. Blade Runner Origins, pick it up if you haven't, from Titan Publishing as well. It's really fucking great, and it's black as fuck as well. And Mello's like me, where he throws in every reference from everything that he's ever grown up with into his book. So that's another thing I loved about the Blade Runner book. It's got a lot of ill references and shit. But he's seen that. I know he's seen people cosplaying as his characters and stuff. So he's been through that a bit already. And this is like, that's the other thing, like that's like we haven't really talked about that as much. It's like, this is Jimi Hendrix. Like today, Jimi Hendrix's Instagram account with 1 million people following posted this shit. And I was just reading through the comments and, seeing people's feeling about Jimi Hendrix and his music and the state of where he's at right now. And to know what this book is going to represent to fans of his, that was another super scary part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm a big fan of his, but I know, like, it's just like no, not even close. Like, I know a lot of Prince's music, and I don't feel like I know shit. I don't know shit about Jimi Hendrix when it really comes down to it. You know what I mean? I know what I know, and I know what I love, and I've learned as much as I can. But I know there are people who, study this man every day of their lives, And so those are the people I wanted to impress.
You could take a breath.
Yeah.
you could take a breath. Take a deep breath, man. I mean, you deserve it, right?
We're supposed to do this for like 20 minutes, then yeah.
No, this is the Benhameen episode, because I'm, I might be privy to some stuff that other people may not be. There's still, every question I asked you was my questions, because I want to understand like how the whole thing developed, right? And how it affects you. Like you mentioned earlier, this being a mental health awareness month, and like, especially as a creative, this stuff affects deeply on so many different levels, right? Like, yes, you're tapping into yourself, your own imagination, but then your own experiences, and then you're pulling that out and putting it to paper, and then being vulnerable in that way, and then people that you love or respect get to read it, and then people who you don't know from a can of beans get to read it, and people will pass judgment. And it's like, so how do you deal?
I don't know yet. That part I don't know yet. Like, honestly,
and that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know that part yet. Like I say, it was mainly just like this. Like, today was one of my biggest, not fears, but like
it might
more like, I don't like anticipation.
That might be the right word.
Yeah, it was fear in a way, anticipation, and just like, I just didn't know. And it's just not over yet, because I still haven't seen everyone.
This is the beginning.
Yeah, I haven't seen so many reactions to, like, even just an announcement from people who I know that I want to see. You know, like Joe hit me, Joe Illich hit me, and we were talking about it, and he was like, yo, proud of you, da 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 da, you know, and so that was really dope. And but me, you know, he's seen stuff because I'd already, you know, I've been distressing with him. I told him a lot of things about it, so he knows a lot of the inside, just like you do. So there are people I'm still waiting on's reaction from just this, and then the reading of it, the actual when people get it in their hands, I have no idea. I don't know how I'm gonna feel when I get it in my hands. Like I said, I still haven't even seen so much. There's still so much work to be done on it. Like the colors, shout out to Justin. You know, they're working on it now. Tom is pretty much almost finished with the art. So I'm about to get the final pages and see that and see the ending, and like how it ends is like a really fucking heartfelt, beautiful moment for me. Like I've asked people who've read you know, the whole thing, and when they finished it, I was like, did you start wanting to cry right here? And they were like, yeah, man. And I was like, yo, that's fucking crazy, because, you know, like that was
you were able to draw that emotion out of people. Yeah.
Because when I've reread it, especially when it took, like when I took a few months off from it and then I reread it, it almost got me. You know, I was like, okay, we really did something here. You know, there's something here. Like, this shit is special, you know, as Khaled would say. And so that, I can't imagine even seeing those pages. And then when Justin starts giving me the colored pages, you know, and then the letter, you know, when they turn in their work, and then when it's physically bound, and, you know, Tom Mandrake did this wraparound cover, which is one of my favorite things in comic books, to have wraparound covers, you know, and so to see it on the shelves when I walk into bookstores and shit, and there's all these moments that I've not, you know, I don't know how.
Do you feel a little bit like He Who Remains, where it's like, you know what's going to happen, but you don't know quite how it's going to happen? Or you know up to a certain point, and it's like, now you don't know what happens after, and you're so excited.
Yeah, everything after this is like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm so excited. Like,
Comiccon.com,
yeah,
Random House,
it's
Barnes
gonna
and
drop.
Nobles,
Yeah, it's gonna drop after New York Comic Con this year, but like next year, 2024, we're gonna be at, you know, probably every con, you know, so that's gonna be a whole different thing that I'm not ready for. And
Forbidden Planet.
I mean,
all I did was I googled the name of the title, and just to see what would pop up, and it's already insane. When is the official drop date?
November 7th.
November 7th.
Election Day, Tuesday.
And people can pre-order now.
Yeah, and people can pre-order now. You can, you know, go to your local comic shop. You can call them up. You can call any bookstore. If you have to, you can use Amazon. If you don't have any of the above in your area, you know, it's available everywhere. You can go straight to Titan's website and I think pre-order it there. And yeah, so November 7th. And
it's okay to feel it, Ben. I mean, you can feel the power, feel the purple haze. Feel it, Ben. I mean, just drink it all in. And as I kept alluding to, this is very, very early on in the process, right?
Yeah. Super early on in the process. Like, this is the first day, and this is the first time that I'm even talking about this. And like I say, because I know the people involved, like because of Mello's name rings bells in the world of comic books now. And because of Tom Mandrake, whose name rings just bells. And because of Hendrix, you know, this is going to reach a lot of areas that I can't even foresee. Like, even the first announcement was made on like some rock website today, where I'm like, you know, that's dope. But
music.
You know, yeah, but it's not who I would expect to be talking about this already.
Yeah. When with this, like, obviously there are things to prep for. Like, obviously you're going to be doing interviews, you're going to be going places, signings, this and that. Like, what do you? I don't know if it's too early to tell, but maybe you have something in mind. What's next, right? Like, do you then parlay this into doing another Hendrix story? Obviously, you don't have it's not your decision, but would you like to? Do you think you want to try something else? Like, what is your thoughts here? Are you like, yo, I'm making graphic novels till the day I die now? Where are you?
I definitely want to do more comics. I knew that from the moment I started writing this one. I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, that, like I said, because having worked in Hollywood for a bit, you know, knowing different sides of it, and I just and like I say, going back to that no budget shit, that shit just gets me. You know, it's like anything you write, they can just draw it, and there it is. You know, and so it's like that is there's no limits. There's nobody being like, yo, I don't know how to create this in CGI, or or when you see it in CGI, it looks terrible, and people are like, oh, your CGI, no, it's like, Tom drew some shit, like there is some super weird shit in this book, and Tom drew it, and it's like, it looks logical, as weird as it is, and it just works, and it's like, wow, and then there's big, expansive IMAX type action in this shit, like even on the cover, you can see this lion dragon looking thing, and I won't say too much more about that because that's a big part of our storyline, but that alone is one of these, fantastical things that would cost so much. So that type of stuff is like, yeah. And so when I first started writing it and realizing, because I'd heard people say that all the time, but realizing what they meant. And then wanting to really because I feel like I obviously barely even scratched the surface of comic books. Like, I don't even know if there's anything in this that, I don't want to say groundbreaking, because there's some groundbreaking shit. Because there's definitely shit in this book I've never seen done in a comic book. And I've asked people about it. I've been like, have you ever seen this type of shit done in a comic book? They're like, nah. I'm like, all right, well, I know we got that, But as far as like the whole form of comic books, there's so many things I would love to explore, and weirdness that I didn't get to attempt in this yet that I would love to, just because of space, or it just wouldn't fit the style of what we were doing here. There's so much more I would love to do. So yeah, more comic books. I'm working on something else right now. Like I've got an idea in my head now that I've been formulating that I think is going to be my next thing. And that might just be something that I might pitch it to some companies, or I might just see about crowdfunding it and just doing it, myself. So
motivated.
Yeah, because I'm super motivated. And yes, I have on my vision board and in my plans to do, work and write the characters that I grew up loving. And, also because I love people like, Kirkman and Kieran Gillen and Jamal, people who create their own, that's what, even though Hendrix is obviously something even in this story, we created. There is so much world building, in this graphic novel. So that is something, like, I felt like you said, could I tell more? I could tell dozens of more stories from this book, man. Anyone could, because there's so much story and so much world building and so much characters that we created who are full and living. Like I say, Rain and Vesper just be knocking in my head all day, to this day, I can't get them out of my head. So I would love to write more of them. Yeah.
Wow. I want to give you a chance. Like I said, it's you're communicating this as it's happening. I can tell everything's happening in real time right now. So
yeah,
I just want to say that I appreciate that. I know you weren't prepared for this, but I was like, nah, he's going to talk about this to me. So this is your episode, Ben, okay? This is your episode. This is the Purple Haze. This is the Jimi Hendrix episode, because I just want people to understand what it's like to be in the maelstrom. You know what I mean? Like, to be in it. We interview creatives all the time. Everybody knows that. You love the questions we ask and all this other stuff. But when it's one of us going through it, like it hits a little bit different. So I'm gonna let you get some peace.
Yeah. This is definitely the craziest thing since American Gods, that I've personally been involved in, because it's been, and even because it's so crazier than American Gods is because I know it's coming out, like as of today, May 17th, I know the date, November 7th.
It's real.
And like you said, this is all real time.
The fan fam are with you.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
We are with you.
I already see, and that was one thing, you said the He Who Remains. That was one thing I could anticipate. I knew the support from the fan fam was to be there. I knew that right away. And man, we always say this, but thank y'all. You know what I mean? Like when I saw people already be like, yo, I already pre-ordered. Boom. Yo, I need my signed copy. Boom.
Shout out to Maze.
Yeah, shout out to my bro Maze, you know what I mean? He was like, yo, it's coming the day after my birthday, down the line though, people have just been hitting me. Yo, I already pre-ordered. Yo, yo, somebody was like, oh man, it's not coming out for NYCC, but I was like, yo, it'll be out for N1 Comet signing though, I'll probably be at Forbidden, as well. Like, so that I knew, and that was great to see the immediate, sight unseen word. Like, it's funny too, because the blurbs that are out right now describing the story are so, they're good blurbs, but it's just barely scratching the fucking surface of this book. And that's what's so hilarious to me, because like one write-up was like, which all sounds perfectly reasonable, was their summation after, sarcastically, because it doesn't sound reasonable, because even the short blurb, it's a lot of ridiculous shit happening. And I was like, yo, that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Like,
and I hope you, and this is just the tip. I don't even think it is the iceberg yet for you when it comes to what happens in the future for you, right? Because obviously, I mean, this is an instance in life, and it's opening more doors and more paths for you, right? And you will have the opportunity to walk through them, even much more so now.
Yeah, and like, I know we're wrapping up, but just like one thing, like we were talking about this on, which I guess will not be a part of this episode anymore, because it's too damn long. But we were talking about this on our UCLA panel, which will be another episode.
It'll be another episode, yes. Yeah, I'm glad you were with me now.
Yeah, but
welcome to the end of the timeline.
Yeah. So on the panel at UCLA, we talked about how, not just with imposter syndrome, but about how one of the biggest lessons that I learned in my life recently, and that I'm still learning every day, is about how what is for you is for you. Right. And like me and Mello, and this is, when I get into the super honest part of the shit, like me and Mello worked on American Gods together, and then I pretty much kind of left Hollywood due to personal reasons and having to deal with a lot of stuff in my life, and he kept working, and now he's like producer on Station 19 and doing this and that, and popping, and I'm like, for a while, me and him even were like, had a kind of falling out, a little bit, because we were just like, in different places, and I wasn't really accepting of that lesson that I needed to learn, and that lesson is that what's for you is for you. And then Mello reached out to me, he got Blade Runner popping with Titan, and then they asked him to do this, and he reached out to me, was like, yo, you want to pitch this with me? Because I know you got music, and I know you can fucking write, and, you need to be writing. And so that was really big, and that like brought our friendship, but we're fucking brothers, that's the thing. Like, we are really brothers. Like, our life intertwines in so many ways that it's weird sometimes, and like, he's a person I met much later in my life who became one of my best friends. Like, I'd known him since I was a 2-year-old. So it brought us back together, and that's something that I'm super grateful for this book for doing. And it taught me that lesson that, because when I was like, oh man, he's doing all this shit and doing all this shit, and I was like, but that's not really what I want for my life either. What I want for my life is shit like this, and that's what the universe provided me, was shit like this. And then it's also providing me with like another big thing I've been doing is my own music and how that's turning out. And it's like, that's what I wanted, and I had to realize that. And I had to realize that what is for you is for you. And that's something that I think is even expressed in this book, because it's so weird how things that you're going through just turn into the stuff that you're creating, because that's something that even Hendrix learns in this book, and so.
Yeah. Well, Benhameen, so infinitely proud of you. And like I said, I'm going to wrap it up there. I think you've expressed the heart and soul of what has occurred. And I'm just looking forward to all the wins on this, and all the future wins, and all the future lessons, and everything in between. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity for you. So congratulations.
Thank you. It was so ill seeing that cover today and seeing like Mello Brown, DJ Benhameen. And I told him I wanted DJ on my name, because I always wanted to carry that with me, like wherever I go, like, because that's what inspired a lot of this.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, it's because I am a DJ, and so I was like, even as a writer, I want that to always be known, DJ, because I want DJs to get, just how I feel Hendrix deserves respect. I want DJs to get their respect. So
big
to
facts.
See that. And then to see Tom motherfucking Mandrake, to see those 3 names on a cover And I was like, yo, that's to be nuts, you know, like Etzman, DJ Benhameen, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like now that I saw that, I was like, oh, okay.
You gotta dream big, man.
Yeah, and nah, bro, that's coming, fam. I'm determined. You know, I dream and I'm determined because nah, man, I want to write Etzman. You know, one of them spin-off books, something with some mutants in it. You know, Incredible Hulk. I'd love to. Now, Incredible Hulk would be one of the ones I don't know because I mean. Etzman, you're standing on the shoulders. No matter what you're doing, you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
The giants, yeah.
So, like, anything you got to represent. And that's just how I feel about comics. And that's what that's what I mean. Like, it's not just like, it don't give a shit that this ain't Etzman. It's still a fucking comic book, you know? So, it's like, I wanted it to be the best fucking comic book ever, you know?
And it's yours. It's yours and Mello's.
Yeah.
And yours alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations, Benhameen. Y'all, as Benhameen said, make sure you cop. This is the comics I cop too. This is technically
the comics.
This is the comics I copped episode. But make sure you're picking up Hendrix Purple Haze. This shit is dropping. You said after Comic-Con, so November
7th. November
7th.
We're going to be talking about this at the Smithsonian.
We're going to be talking about it at the Smithsonian.
I was so hyped to see it out. It is Afrofuture, and they mentioned it in the blurb. I was like, yes, and it's out.
We're going to talk about
it. Once again, I didn't know when this was fucking coming out, y'all, so I didn't even know.
It was perfect timing. It comes up after.
I know, so we'll be able to big it up. And by then, you know, we'll be able to talk much more about the story. There'll be a lot more about it. You know, art will be out. There will be a lot more going on with it by then.
Benhameen, thank you for letting For All Nerds be the first exclusive worldwide premiere. Flex bomb.
I mean, where else would I go, you know?
Where else would you be but home, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for pouring your heart and telling the truth to the fam and for All Nerds. Like, definitely appreciate you talking through everything. And again, going through every emotion in real time, that takes a lot of courage. So thank you. As always, make sure y'all are locked into For All Nerds on your favorite podcast platform. Support us. Make sure you buy DJ Benhameen and Mellow Brown's graphic novel. Make sure you're on forallnerds.com that you can get dope shit like the t-shirt Mr. Hendrix himself up there is wearing, the T'Challa and Friends shirt. Also, you can hit up and grab my Gucci Mandalorian shirt, as well as an amazing variety of other designs. Hit up our Patreon, patreon.com/forallnerds. You see the vibes. You know the fucking vibes. You see what your love and your support is turning into or has already turned into. But look how much further it's gone. This is because y'all have supported us from listening and sharing and giving us money and all this other stuff in between, because everything you've done has poured back into this vehicle, back into For All Nerds. It's poured back into you all. It's poured into facilitating opportunities to put in more amazing shit into the world that you enjoy. So first and foremost, as always, thank you to the fam. Appreciate you. Love you. Benhameen, you did that.
Thank you to Mellow Brown, my brother, Mellow Marketer.
Thank you, Mellow. You did that.
Yeah, love you for life. Thank you, Tom Mandrake. Man.
You got to come on the show, Mellow.
Yeah, Mellow.
And Tom.
We'll all be back. You know, we're definitely doing a signing together. Like I said, we're planning that already. At anyone comments, all three of us. Thank you to Justin Prokovich, our colorist, and like I say,
nigga, this ain't the Source Awards. You ain't gonna just be thanking everybody.
Hey man, I gotta thank the colorist.
Thank you to my engineer.
All that shit. Thank God.
Thank you, Luna.
Thank God. Yeah, thank you, Luna, for putting up with us as always. But no, thank you again to everyone. Like we said, thank you to the fam. Thank you to everyone listening. Thank you for everyone who listened to this. I did not, we were planning to do like a quick 20 minutes. And then get into some other stuff that we have already recorded. Plans. But Tatiana obviously had other plans and tricked me into burying my soul on this episode. So thank you very much, man. Like I said, and that's the funniest shit. Through all this, we barely, not even scratch the surface of what's in this book, man. So
that's the joy for everybody who's gonna read it.
I know.
I don't want to know. I want to be.
You've never even read the scripts, right?
I have not.
No, because you wouldn't want. Yep, you wanted to be.
I want to be fresh off the boat on this one. Like I want to see it from the beginning.
I can't wait to see these last pages come in. I'm still like, oh yeah, this shit here.
Thank y'all for listening. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all.
Love you. Peace.